Steve, I mean, you've mentioned FUD already. Just give us your view on what you think about FUD and GDPR.
I think it's worth remembering that the ICO's website, even though there's not that much on GDPR that's on at the moment, in terms of concrete guidance, is really useful. And that a lot of people assume that consent is the answer to all of this. And the ICO's come out fairly recently to say, well, actually, it isn't. You need to think about what you're doing, why you're doing it. And you might have what she refers to as a legitimate interest. And like I said before, there's an awful lot of people saying, this is the end of programmatic, this is the end of a number of different ways of marketing. But I think the message that comes through loud and clear is that if you're doing data protection and privacy right now, the chances are you're going to be doing it right in May next year when the GDPR actually comes into force. And Brexit will make absolutely no difference to any of this, mainly because this is a regulation. It comes into law automatically. We don't need to pass another piece of legislation like the Data Protection Act. And not only that, we have an idea of what's going to be in the Data Protection Bill, which actually fills in the gaps between GDPR and what isn't covered within our domestic legislation. So I think whilst there's a lot of people saying, well, we need to go and re-consent everybody, they refer to the Morrison's case study, or is it the Money Supermarket case study a little bit later on as to how not to do that. But I think people just needs to be a bit of backing down from their hysteria and looking into detail at what you got, where you got it from. More importantly, why you need this data, what you're doing with it, and what do you intend to do with it. If you start off by asking yourself, what is the reasonable expectation of the individual that's within this database? What do they expect to get from you? And that's your guiding principle. And you're really not going to go too far wrong. But as I say, there is a lot of selling at the moment on GDPR based on fear. And if you have, let's say, if you have a decent, responsible approach to data protection, then although the fines go up, although some new rights are brought in, although consent is going to change, then you're not really going to go that far wrong. Okay.
Harry, we've still got the guidelines on consent coming through in the new year. We've also got WP 29. So perhaps if you could talk us a little bit through that. And then there's changes to the PECR. It's full of TLAs and FLAs. Privacy and electronic communications regulations. So all those are feeding in. So we've still got the things unsettled, and yet we're being asked to completely revolutionise all our data.
Only today I commented on a post on LinkedIn, and anyone who's a student of this subject, I strongly recommend that you get involved in following people on LinkedIn, because there's some fantastic discussions going on at the present moment and a couple of specialist groups in there. But they were saying that they're not going to do anything about the marketing databases and any of the GDPR compliance because they don't know what the position is about consent yet. And there's just so much you can be doing about trying to prepare your business for GDPR without waiting for the Working Party 29 to come up with a definition of consent. One of the biggest things that's going to undermine GDPR in any organisation is poor data security. One of the fastest growing crimes in the country at the present moment, or the world, is cybersecurity, denial of access and other sort of ransomware activities. So there's lots and lots of things to be doing at the present moment to get your organisation to comply with the GDPR before the 25th of May. Steve took the thunder away from me there, because he was saying about Elizabeth Denham, the Information Commission Officer, has been said, don't worry just about consent. There are 6 bases to lawfully process information about people, and legitimate interest, so long as you're not overriding the rights and freedoms of an individual, will give you a perfect right to market to them. So, you do need to consent. PECR, that's again based on an e-regulation, that's going to be updated by the 25th of May, theoretically. There's an absolutely superb article just gone out through LinkedIn by the compliance officer of the Times newspaper. George Montague has put an excellent paper together, article together on e-privacy revisions, targeted advertising. So there's material like this that you can source. He said it's his personal opinion, but he's made some strong opinions, voiced some strong opinions in terms of the way PECR and e-privacy will go. So I agree with Steve, it's not something to panic about, but it's something that we really have to get moving on. We've had 17 months to do something about this, and most organisations I bump into, they're just really, one of the 16% Dave came across, oh, we were aware of it, but we're just beginning to plan now.
David, have you got anything more to add to that?
The don't panic message is definitely right. There is a lot of misinformation, a lot of scaremongering does go on. I'll just mention the one client that is compliant and why are they compliant. 5 years ago, before GDPR was even whispered anywhere, they had a long look at the existing Data Protection Act. The client, they're a 5-star hotel, they're a Michelin star restaurant. They value customer service, they value their customers. And they looked at the principles of data protection at that time and said, how do we do this properly? And so they started 5 years ago making sure that everybody that contacted them, whether they be customers, whether they be people looking to become customers, asking them, do you mind if we speak to you? How would you like us to speak to you? If you don't want to receive something, please tell us. They did an awful lot of the basics that's required for consent. So they already have a 98% database which is fully compliant under the new definitions of consent as far as they go, because nobody quite knows exactly what they're going to be. But they know, because they know it's important to speak to people in the way they want to be spoken to and not to speak to people who don't want to be contacted. And that's actually what marketing to me is all about. It's about where it's going. And I think this will actually, long term, once we've got over this, how the hell do we get compliant and get past that initial barrier, I think it will eventually become something quite positive and something quite beneficial in terms of marketing and the way people are receptive to it.
I think that's the spirit of what the ICO is actually looking for, is that cooperative, positive, and to remove what we're doing as marketers, or could be said to do, and that is this whole spam element of things. And that's really why this whole GDPR has been introduced, is to try and reduce all this. Okay, I've put up on the screen, there is a draft guidance on consent, and Elizabeth has said consent is only one way to comply, but not the only way. Harry's mentioned about there are another, I think it's 5, is it? 5 other ways. They tend to not be where you could use it for marketing, however. But it's unlikely that the guidance that you have there will change very much. So that's exactly, these are quotes I'm actually getting from the ICO's website.